Welcome back, everybody. So today we're just going to have I guess, brew day for my Rye IPA series that I have coming up. I do get a lot of questions on how I make these and what I use, so I figured since this is kind of a new series, I would go ahead and go over the basic, I guess, recipe and how I make my small batches. So small batches, 1.25 gallons going into the carboy. I start out with 2 gallons of water. By my calculations, is 16 pounds, 10.8 ounces of water. So that's what I usually start off. Obviously, you just saw 10 or 16 pounds, 11 ounces, close enough. We are going to do a mash out. So we'll bring our water level up to the correct level with that. So get that on the stove so that way that can heat up and we're not wasting time. And then we're going to start our grain bill. So for this Rye IPA series, the majority is going to be as follows. 2 pounds, 1 ounce of either premium malt, pale malt, raw, or 2-row. In this version, I am using 2-row. And you'll also see going forward in this video that the hops might not be the same. I do have, I think, 6 batches done, so I have changed them up. So other grains are going to be 5.5 ounces of Cara malt, 5.5 ounces of rye that you see going in to the container now, and then 3.7 ounces of flaked rye. Now, I do hold my flaked rye out of the milling process, but we'll go over that in a minute. So while the water is heating, get your grains into your mill, or if you're at the homebrew store, mill everything. Do not mill your flaked rye or oats, anything like that, ever. I don't like doing that. It can get into the crusher and then slip, and then some of your malt or grain could not get crushed correctly. So I always put my grain in at the end, or my rye, flaked rye, oats in at the end, so that way you know everything's going to get crushed. So that's what the rye looks like, flaked rye. It is a little redder than, say, oats or anything like that, but I have never used them. That's why I wanted to make a Rye IPA. I do like Chinook hops, and I think they do give off some spicy notes, but I figured, why not? Let's make some different beers. So again, grind everything except for the flaked rye. And then once everything's smashed, tore apart, then go ahead and put your flaked rye in there. Sometimes I stir it up. In this case, it's not really going to make a difference as we are using brew in the bag. So once we put everything into the bag, we're going to have to stir it anyway. So it's fine if you just put it in there. Sometimes I'll stick my hand in there and toss it around a little bit. But like I said, once we get to the putting everything in the bag, you're gonna stir it up anyway. So for the most part on my small batches, mash in 152. I'll take it up to like 154. And the only reason for that, I don't go too high, is my oven will only preheat to 170 or as low as 170. So it is the temperature of the water or grist or whatever you want to call it will come up some. So if we're a little low, it's fine. Is it gonna, stop you from making good beer? No. If you were really trying to have the same outcome through like 15 or 20 batches, yeah, you might want to try something a little bit different. But for what we're trying to do, or what I'm trying to do, this works just fine. So once we got all the grains stirred in there, we are going to put this in there for an hour. Now, as I said, our mash in is 152. After a half hour, as I can only preheat to 170, I will turn it off. And by the end of the hour, I'm at 152, 154. Now, this is where it's going to differ just a little. In this video, you see Mosaic is being used. I think this is batch 5. So the normal batch calls for the following hops: 1 hour boil, 0.28 ounces of Centennial at 60, 0.28 ounces of Centennial at 5, 0.28 ounces of Chinook at 5. Then on this batch and all the other ones so far, I've used US-05 yeast. So once our mash in is done, we're going to pull that out. We're going to lift the bag up. I have a strainer that I will put under it so it can drain. It's really up to you. If you wanted to make your brew day a little bit quicker, 10 minutes left, you could start heating up water for your mash out. Sometimes this does differ. For my pot, I know I have to be at the bottom of the colander. So, and that usually takes a full pot that you see here to get back up to that. Most of the time, I will start my mash out water after my mash in is done, just so I can pull some more grains, as depending on what kind of grains you're using, this could go over the side. The water could, because it's not soaking down fast enough. I do see a big difference when I use wheat. Any kind of wheat that I have to pour slower, where if I'm just using like a 2-row and a Crystal 40, I can really pour it through there. Yes, am I drawing out all the sugars? Probably not. But if you've been watching any of my videos, usually my ABV is up over what it should be. So I am pulling enough sugars out. So here you can see a little bit, sometimes the water's going to the edge. I have had it run over the edge before. But again, for what we're doing, this is a home brew. As long as it's good, we can drink it. Sometimes I do use the paddle to push it over, so I do get a little bit more of the sugars out. For the mash out water, I just heat it up. Sometimes I'll put a thermometer on there, but when I start seeing bubbles, it's usually around 120. I'll shut it off and pour it on there. Some people just use room temp water. Again, it's going to be your personal preference of how long you let this go up, or if you go up to like 170, 165, whatever you would like. So after this, what I do is that same container that I measure my grains out with, I will set this in that and start heating the mash up. I do add firm cap, probably a little too much every time, 10 small drops. I stir that in there, and then right before boil or at boil, I will take whatever's in there and pour it into the pot. There's the firm cap going in there. As I said, 8 to 10 drops. I think it's 2 drops per gallon. We're only dealing with 2 gallons, so technically it should only be 4, but I have had it when I've done less really start foaming up and almost have a boil over, and that wouldn't be good in the kitchen. So I stir that in there, and then, yeah, it's just a waiting game until it comes up to a boil. And right after that, or right before it, usually, I'll take the liquid and pour it in there, whatever's left, and then that's pretty much it. So there you go. That's how much liquid I had left over, and then we'll come to a boil. I think I could watch a beer boil all day long. It's kind of cool how it goes from the sides. Sometimes it'll be the top, sometimes it'll be the bottom. But this is one point where you don't want to walk away, as if you're not using firm cap or something like that, you could easily have a boil over. So I would say make sure you're watching when it gets close to a boil. So once we reach our boil, as I said, for the hop schedule, we're going to put in 0.28 ounces of Centennial. And you can see it is coming up. But for the most part, using that firm cap, 8 to 10 drops, it shouldn't go over, but I would say always make sure you're watching at this point, just in case. So once that comes up, then we know we're good. So I always weigh out my next hop or hops, depending on what it is. But for this, it would be the next 2, because we're going to put 0.28 ounces of each Centennial and Chinook in there. Most of the time I'll weigh one out, then put it into a container, then weigh the next. But the Chinook pellets are so small, you can really see the difference in there. So this time I just kept everything there and added both of it. So we want 5 or 0.56. We're at 0.565 ounces. So I will probably keep it there because it's 0.005. So then, yeah, after that, we'll cool it down and then put it into a carboy. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you have any questions, or if you want to see me do this with any of my other batches. Until next time, happy brewing.